Hello everybody, today I'm going to be your Sim CFI, and in this video we're going to cover short field landings and shutting down and securing the airplane. Now a short field landing, as kind of name implied, is a landing you're going to use when you have an extra short field that you can't afford to float over and just roll down to the end of the runway. You're going to have to fly at a precise, slower speed on final, and you're going to have to set the airplane down on the runway on a spot within a few hundred feet or so you can apply maximum braking and stop before you roll off the end of the runway. And so for the purpose of this flight and for safety, we're not going to land directly at the end of the runway at the numbers down there. We're going to choose a safer spot to land further down the runway so that we can still come in on the normal glide slope and not get too close to the ground or other obstacles down there. So for this video, we're going to aim to land beyond the start of this fourth stripe here. You got 1, 2, 3, 4 center line stripes. Each stripe is 120 feet long with 80 feet in between. So from the beginning of one stripe to the beginning of another stripe is going to be 200 feet. And the private pilot practical test standards says when you demonstrate a short field landing, you'll pick a spot on the runway and land at that spot or somewhere beyond 200 feet. And so you can choose beginning of the first stripe to the beginning of the second stripe. Now the commercial PTS says you're going to land within 100 feet of your spot. And so if you have a runway that's shorter than, I think, 4,700, you have to look that one up, but shorter runways, this aiming point here will be 100 feet long, and so you can use that. But on most runways that are longer than 4,000 some feet, then this aim point will be 150 feet long, as it is here at Marysville. This is a 6,000 foot runway. So we're going to aim for the beginning of the fourth stripe and aim to land by the beginning of the fifth stripe. So we'll come in at a normal glide slope. We'll pull the power right around the threshold, and then that'll bleed off enough airspeed for us to flare and land. And now we're going to approach the runway the same we always have, except we're going to put full flaps on a little bit sooner, and we're going to aim for 60 knots instead of 65. We got landing light on, mixed or rich fuel both. That's our before landing checklist. So now we reduce power to 1400, 10 degrees flaps. Hold the control forward to avoid ballooning from the flaps. Now we're 80 knots, we descend to 80. That'll yield us about 500 feet per minute. Put a little bit of nose down trim to help you maintain that. Get our power back up to 1400. A little bit slower than 80, but that's not a big deal. Okay, we're about 45 degrees off the end of the runway. We're going to turn base. This will give us roughly 75 knots. Maintaining 500 feet per minute. And remember, no more than 30 degrees bank in the turns in the pattern, just to keep it safe. Time to turn final. Final looks clear. We'll go full flaps right now. And since we're going to have to slow down more, we're going to have to pitch up to slow down. And if we pitch up, we're going to be even higher than we are now. So we reduce power to maintain our descent, and that allows me to pitch up a bit to start getting our 60 knots. So I'm going to go throttle idle, because we're going to need to descend more. That allows us to use our pitch control here to get 60 knots. So 60 knots, power's at idle. We're slightly above the glide slope right now. And we're going to aim to land at the beginning of the fourth stripe. And so I'm aiming for the end of the runway, right around the numbers, the beginning of the first stripe. And then we'll float. So I'll add a little power to get 60 here. And I'll pull power off. And hopefully we float right down to the fourth one. There's one. Here's the second stripe. Third stripe. Oh, we're a little bit early. There's the fourth stripe. Wheels are down, flaps up, maximum braking. That's how you do a short field landing. So now let's taxi off the runway. So I landed just a bit shy of the point, but it takes some practice, and you gotta figure out when you can pull power and how much your plane's gonna float. It takes practice. And that's why you want to practice at safer distances down the runway, so that when you do encounter a short field, you can be confident that you're going to be able to touch down at the point you need to be able to land and stay on the runway. So now that we're coming off the runway, we're going to pass this hold short line here, and you can see that it's dashed on our end that we just passed, which means we can proceed through, but this double yellow means if you're going the other way, you got to stop and make sure the runway is clear before you get on. So when you're getting off the runway, you want to make sure you get completely past that, your tail is completely past that. That means you're actually off the runway. We'll come to a stop, bring the throttle to 1,000, holding the brakes, and then we'll do a flow left or right, landing light off, strobe light off, transponder to standby, and flaps are already up from the short field procedure. But normally this is where you'd put your flaps up, and then you like to reset the trim here, and then we'll bring the mixture about halfway out so we can avoid fouling our spark plugs as we taxi in, and then we'd pull out our after landing checklist, and you would see that we've accomplished all those items. So now we're going to taxi in. We're coming up to an intersection, so we'll make sure we're clear left and right. We'll taxi in. You always want to accomplish all your checklist items before you start moving again. This is especially important when it's just single pilot operations. If you have a passenger or another pilot passenger, you can have them read the checklist, or if they're another pilot, you can have them do the items for you if you're comfortable doing that as PSC. Because you always want to be able to keep your hands on the controls and your eyes outside the airplane looking for traffic. So as a taxi, we'll follow these yellow lines until we find a parking spot. Okay, throttle. I usually bring the throttle up to 1,000 before shutting down. And now before shutting down, let's apply the parking brake. The main key is to turn off these avionics. So turn off these avionics, and you don't have to switch off each individual unit like this. If you have an avionics master switch, you can just flip the switch on and off. The next step will be the ground and magnetos. We're going to do this by bringing the key momentarily to the off position and then right back to on. If the engine does not cut momentarily, then there's a problem with your grounding wire, and if you shut down the engine with a magneto that doesn't ground, you could pull the prop through and risk having the engine start, at least for a little bit, but it'll be enough to have the prop slice through whatever it's in its way. So we ground them like that. You could see the engine wanted to quit there a little bit, just like that. And now we've turned the avionics off, we've grounded the magnetos, we'll pull the mixture out. The engine will come to a stop. Once the prop stops, magnetos off, master off, beacon off. Just make sure everything else is off as you go. And then look down, make sure the trim is reset. I'll put the fuel in the left tank because that's how we're going to start it. Take out the headset, push the yoke in, put the control lock in. That's it for inside the cabin. Let's get out of the airplane. So now here we can close the door, empty the plane. You'll put the pitot cover on, the tie downs, and the wheel chock, and we already have our control lock in. And then this is how you secure a 172 in the real world. And so in this video we covered our short field landing, and then taxiing off the runway, finding a parking spot, and shutting down. Okay, I'll see you in the next video.